Okay, ready to dive in. Today, it's all about stimulus control in ABA.
It's fascinating, really.
Yeah, you know how those little cues around us shape behavior, not just pigeons, but people too.
It's everywhere, all the time, constantly influencing us.
Right, so the chapter you gave me starts off talking about antecedent stimuli.
The things that happen before a behavior, influencing it.
Okay, but the terms get a bit tricky.
Sure, like discriminative stimulus, SD for short.
I was getting lost there a bit.
Think green traffic light. It tells you, go, cross the street safely.
So it's like this behavior gets you what you want.
Exactly. Reinforcement is available. Then there's the opposite, the extinction stimulus.
That's delta, right.
Yeah, like a closed sign when you wanted to go in. Nope, not happening.
Like trying to chat at the gym when someone's got headphones in. Total S delta. Learn that one.
For ABA folks, spotting these SDs and S Deltas is crucial.
Helps us figure out why behaviors are happening or not.
Exactly. And how to change things. The chapter uses pigeons, classic example.
To show how these cues actually control behavior.
Yeah, differential reinforcement. Pigeons pecking a key, food only when it's red.
Green key, no food. So they learned.
They learned which color meant peck and get rewarded.
Not random pecking, but based on what happens after.
Exactly. That's stimulus control, those learned connections. Not about the pigeon smarts.
So important when working with anyone. Different learning styles, abilities.
Not blaming them, but figuring out what the environment's doing.
Making sure it helps, right? So, simple behaviors. Got it. What about more complex actions?
Oh, stimulus control can handle that. Chains of actions. Think of it like...
Like steps in a routine?
Yes. Toothbrushing, each step has its own cue. See the brush, pick it up, then the toothpaste.
So each step is like the SD for the next step.
Exactly. Over time, it all flows, not like a kid suddenly knows to brush. It's all those paired stimuli and responses.
Makes sense. And not just toothbrushing, right? This is learning anything, school stuff, social stuff.
Think reading. Each letter is an SD for its sound. Then you string the sounds, and boom, reading. Build those chains.
Powerful stuff. We've done discrimination in different responses to different cues. What about generalization? Opposite, right?
Yeah, when the behavior happens even with stuff similar to the original SD.
So not just dog for my dog, but any dog.
Exactly. Extending the learning. Crucial for life, but sometimes.
It goes too far.
Kid calling all men daddy or fearing all dogs after one bad experience. Overgeneralizing.
Okay, so balance is key.
Yep. ABA is about choosing the right training cues, lots of examples, and techniques like fading to shift control gradually.
We'll get to that later. But first, peak shift. This one tripped me up.
Peak shift gets really interesting. So you train that difference, SD versus S delta.
Right, like this gets rewarded, that doesn't.
But the strongest response might not be to the exact thing you reinforced. Almost like
they're going overboard.
Yeah. Imagine teaching squares versus rectangles. They might react most to things even more square-like than what you used.
Exaggerating the difference.
Exactly. Seems weird, but peak shift matters. Explains phobias, maybe body image distortions too.
Like how the ideal body gets further and further from what's seen as bad.
Right, and the chapter even suggests it in art, how artists exaggerate for impact.
So it's everywhere, even where you don't expect it. Mind blown. Back to basics, though. The chapter talks about errorless learning.
Trying to teach without the learner making mistakes.
Sounds nice. How?
You bring in that S delta early on, but in a way they're unlikely to pick it.
Setting them up to succeed right away.
Right. Teaching blue instead of similar purple, use yellow at first. As they get good with blue, slowly make the other choice closer.
So they never really get it wrong. Less frustration, faster learning.
Especially helpful for some developmental disabilities, builds confidence from the start.
Makes sense. Mistakes can be so discouraging. And then there's fading related, right?
Big in ABA, gradually changing the cue, shifting control smoothly.
Like taking the training wheels off bit by bit.
Exactly. Writing, you start with tracing dotted letters, then less and less dots till they're on their own.
Okay, so not just for school stuff.
Social skills, communication, even reducing problem behaviors. Smooth transitions.
So many ideas popping up. We've done discrimination, generalization, peak shift, errorless, fading.
Barely scratching the surface.
I feel like I'm seeing the world differently already. But before we go wild, one more thing from the chapter. Complex stimulus control.
This is where it gets even more interesting, moving past simple colors or shapes.
Okay, lay it on me.
How do organisms respond to combinations of stimuli? We study this with matching to sample.
I've heard of that. Show a sample, then they pick the match from a few choices.
You got it. But there are variations. Identity matching to sample, IMTS, is the basic one.
So just recognizing what's the same.
Exactly. But we can make it harder. Delayed matching to sample, DMTS.
Add a waiting period.
Right. Now it's discrimination in memory.
I bet that's useful for studying learning disabilities, cognitive decline, all sorts of things.
You bet. Memory, attention, problem solving, it's all there. And then there's conditional matching to sample.
Hit me with it.
Imagine a rule. Match by color if it's a shape, match by sound if it's a letter. Now they got to pay attention to two things.
And figure out which rule matters based on what they see first.
Precisely. This can show us so much about how someone processes information, follows instructions, adapts to different situations.
Wow. So these matching games can really reveal a lot about how we think and learn.
And it's a powerful tool to study concept formation, how we make sense of the world.
My mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
We're getting into how thinking itself might work, at least partly, through all this stimulus control and reinforcement stuff.
That's the heart of behavior analysis, understanding how the environment shapes us, even in those complex cognitive tasks.
It's like we're seeing the machinery behind the curtain.
And that's empowering. Behavior isn't fixed, it can be shaped and changed.
This has been an amazing journey so far. Can't wait to hear more about how all this applies to people and how to use it to make things better.
Oh, we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore.
I'm all ears. Let's do it.
You know, it's fascinating how we can take these principles from the lab, pigeons picking keys, and train animals to do amazing things that help people.
Yeah, real world stuff. I loved that bit about pigeons doing quality control for a drug company.
Isn't that wild? They used pigeons to inspect drug capsules, comparing them to a perfect sample.
Like, yep, that one's good. Nope, that one's messed up.
Exactly. Pigeons have super sharp vision, great at visual discrimination. Turns out they were really good at it, too.
Better than some machines, even, the chapter said.
Around 99% accurate, both spotting good capsules and defects. But how do you keep them motivated, right?
Yeah, no performance bonuses for pigeons.
It's all about the reinforcement. They'd get a treat for correct identifications. Kept them on point.
Contingencies at work, even for feathered inspectors. But wait, there's more, right? Something about pigeons and missiles.
Ah, the missile-guiding pigeons. That one's more of a historical curiosity. Skinner explored the idea, but it never really took off. But pigeons did help the Navy with search and rescue.
Pigeons saving lives. Tell me more.
In the 70s and 80s, they trained pigeons to spot things in the water from helicopters. Life vests, rafts, you name it.
So like little feathered lifeguards.
Pretty much. They could see stuff miles away, often better than humans. When they teamed up with human search teams,
Success rate went way up.
almost 100%. It's a testament to creative application of these principles.
Amazing. Real-life superhero team. But pigeons are good with visual stuff. What about smell?
Ah, that's where dogs and rats come in.
I know dogs are used for sniffing out drugs, explosives.
Their noses are incredible, but the chapter mentioned rats, too.
Rats. For real.
Yeah, they're surprisingly good at it. And clicker training has been a game changer for this kind of work.
I've heard of clicker training, but not sure exactly how it works.
It's all about associating the click with a reward. Click means good job, treat coming.
So the click itself becomes a reinforcer.
Exactly. And that's super useful when you can't give a treat right away, like you're training a dog to find explosives at an airport.
Can't just stop and have a treat party every time.
Exactly. The click marks the exact moment, reward comes later. And, get this, they've trained African giant pouched rats to find landmines.
Rats. Finding landmines. That's both weird and awesome.
They're light enough to walk on a minefield without setting them off, and their noses are phenomenal. They've cleared thousands of landmines, making communities safer.
That's incredible. Applying these principles to solve a real problem.
Yeah.
But dogs are still the classic sniffers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Drugs, explosives, missing persons, even bedbugs. Their noses are amazing, plus they're trainable and love to please.
Like you're using their superpowers. But can you top rats and landmines, dogs and bedbugs?
Well, there's a growing area of research on using dogs to detect cancer in humans.
Wait, dogs can smell cancer?
It sounds crazy, but the research is promising. They can pick up on certain compounds, VOCs they're called, in breath, urine, even sweat.
So specific chemicals linked to cancer, not just some general cancer smell.
Right. Studies show they can be incredibly accurate even in early stages when it's hard to diagnose otherwise.
Like a built-in early warning system. It's not just fetching and chasing squirrels anymore, it's potentially saving lives.
Exactly. It shows what we can do when we combine our understanding of behavior with those amazing animal senses.
Mind-blowing. It's like the worlds of animal training and cutting-edge science are merging.
And it all goes back to those behavior analysis fundamentals. How organisms learn, how reinforcement shapes things, and how we can use stimulus control to achieve incredible things.
I'm starting to see why this field is so captivating. It's not just pigeons in a lab. It's about those core principles that drive behavior in all species.
Including our own. The more we understand those principles, the better we can apply them to make a real difference.
This deep dive has been amazing. I'm seeing the world in a whole new light.
That's the first step. And as we wrap up this part of our exploration of stimulus control, remember, behavior is not random.
Right, it's not just happening out of nowhere.
It's influenced by environmental cues and the consequences of our actions.
So we can actually influence behavior by changing those things. That's hopeful.
That's the core of it. We can create environments that support positive change, whether it's for individuals, families, whole communities even.
Wow, that's powerful. We're not just along for the ride. We can actually shape our own destinies.
And that's what behavior analysis is all about. Using what we know to make the world better. Helping kids with autism communicate, training service dogs, designing better interventions for addiction, mental health. The possibilities are endless.
This has been so inspiring. I'm walking away with so much to think about and a new appreciation for what behavior analysis can do.
It's been a joy sharing this with you. And remember, stay curious because behavior is everywhere. It really makes you think, how much we can learn about how the mind works just by watching how people and animals react to cues around them.
It's amazing. We've talked about pigeons inspecting pills, being like lifeguards, rats finding landmines, dogs sniffing out cancer.
It's like, wow, those basic principles really can be used for so much.
Right. And not just training animals, but understanding how they actually perceive things.
It's a whole field of study, really fascinating. But how do they test what an animal sees or hears,
Yeah, you can't exactly just ask them.
It takes some creativity. Think about color vision in pigeons.
Okay.
You could train them to peck a key when they see yellow, for example.
Using the reward system so they learn what to do.
Exactly. Once they've got that down, you start changing the shade of yellow bit by bit.
And see if they still peck the key.
Right. If they stop, you know that shade is too different from the original yellow for them to see it the same way.
Like a game of hot or cold, but with colors.
Huh. I like that. You're mapping out their sensory world through their actions.
And sometimes you find surprising things, right? Like the chapter mentioned how birds can see ultraviolet light.
Imagine that, a whole world of colors we're totally blind to.
Wow. It makes you think, what else are we missing?
It shows how important it is to understand animal behavior from their point of view, not just our own limited human one.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's like behavior analysis isn't just theory. It can really do amazing things.
Oh, absolutely. We've just scratched the surface here with all this talk about reinforcement, generalization, peak shift, fading, even how animals form concepts.
I'm already looking at the world differently.
That's great to hear. And as we wrap up this episode on stimulus control, I think the key takeaway is that behavior isn't random.
Yeah, it's not just happening for no reason.
It's all about those environmental cues and the consequences that follow our actions.
And that means we can actually do something to change behavior, right? By changing those things.
That's the power of it. We can build environments that encourage positive change for individuals, families, even whole communities.
It makes you feel like you have some control, like you're not just stuck.
Exactly. And that's what gets me excited about behavior analysis. Using what we know to make things better, whether it's helping kids with autism learn to talk, training service dogs, finding better ways to address addiction or mental health. There's so much potential.
It's inspiring. I'm walking away with a whole new perspective and a lot of hope.
I'm so glad to hear that. Keep exploring, keep observing, because behavior is all around us.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep asking questions.